Greetings, ladies and gentlemen, wherever you're watching this from, on behalf of Nepal Institute for International Cooperation and Engagement and Water Policy Center, it gives me immense pleasure to welcome you all. I extend a very warm welcome to our distinguished chair, Mr. Monish, and participants who registered for the event. We're so glad that you could join us today at the NIICE WPC International Conference on Post-Pandemic World Order, Navigating the New Normal. Throughout the 3 days of the conference, we will be having 30 sessions that will take place at 2 different Zoom rooms simultaneously. We have around 150 experts and speakers joining us from 30 different companies who will be delivering their presentations and sharing their expertise with us. Dr. Monish, Tourangbam, our chair for this session, is a senior assistant professor at the Department of Geopolitics and International Relations, Manipal Academy of Higher Education, NIICE, Manipal, India, and the coordinator of the Northeast Studies Center at NIICE. He's a visiting fellow at NICE. His research interests include great power politics in international relations, US foreign policy and grand strategy, US domestic politics, emerging geopolitics of the Indo-Pacific, etc. He is featured editor of foreign policy for the Science, Technology and Security Forum run by the Manipal Advanced Research Group, MARG, and executive editor of the Northeast Diary, a newsletter on affairs of India's northeastern region. He's a fellow at the Kalinga Institute of the Indo-Pacific Studies. In addition to it, he has a number of publications to his credit and has been a regular contributor to a number of prominent strategic affair platforms, including the South Asian Voices and the Diplomat. Sir, it's a pleasure to have you here. Without any further ado, let me ask Dr. Monish to chair the session. Sir, the floor is all yours. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Paki. And thank you for your generous introduction. Welcome to this session, to all the speakers. And we have a very illustrious list of speakers today in this session to discuss, two, as I see from the list, two very important reasons, because all of the countries that I find the speakers speaking on belong either to South Asia or the Southeast Asian region. And the interlocking security complexes of these two regions makes, a number of themes that are going to be discussed today, and the impact of the pandemic COVID-19 in the politics and economics of these countries, fairly pertinent to discuss. And all of the issues that I see cover a wide ground in terms of, a number of varying issues in a number of countries spanning across these two regions, which impacts the larger geopolitics and the geoeconomics of the larger South Asian and Southeast Asian region, with certainly a larger regional and global implications. Without further ado, again, I will not spend too much time, trying to tell the audience what the speakers are going to speak. Our speakers are more than adept to do that. And I will also not spend too much time after each speaker trying to sum up again for the audience what the speakers have spoken. I leave that for the speakers and erudite, sessions. And certain housekeeping rules before I start this session, which is that, as has been notified by NICE, the maximum time permitted to each speaker will not be more than 15 minutes. And so, I will apologize and I will seek your cooperation that on the 13th minute, I'll put a show of hand, and that will be my indicator to somehow sum up the presentation, so that we can leave more time for discussion and deliberation. The question and answers will come through the chat box, and everyone joining this session can put their questions on the chat box, which I will collect and deliberate at the end of the presentations. Without taking any more time, let me start with the first speaker of the session, Dr. Mohammad Nazif Azizi, who is a senior fellow at the Afghanistan Information Services and Skills Organization. And he is speaking on a very, very imminent and pertinent theme that impacts the peace and security of the region, the peace process in Afghanistan, and its impact in South Asian region in the post-pandemic era. Dr. Azizi, the floor is yours. Dr. Azizi? I think we can, in that case, we can move over to the next speaker is Jay Nisant online. Do we have Jay Nisant?
Thank you, speaker.
Okay, okay. Dr. Azizi is online. Please go ahead. Your time starts now, sir.
Hello. Okay, great. Great. Such a pleasure to be speaking. So I will start with Assalamu alaikum. Have a good morning and a good day. And I'll be speaking about the Afghan peace and its implications for South Asia and beyond the region. Of course, starting with the understanding that we have in regards to the COVID, we all know that any disaster, any crisis, be it conflict, earthquakes, or any pandemic, aspects of the human lives and dimensions become more and more exposed. We do get the opportunity to understand the fractures and the weaknesses within our systems. We do realize how strained the relationships between the governments and the people are. And lastly, I think the globalization gets a complete new definition as a result of the COVID-19. Now, be it the violence against the minorities in Pakistan or India, be it the Taliban.
Hello, Dr. Azizi.
Armed group or the Arakan army or any other armed exposed as a result of this in terms of the, yes, please. Hello?
Was the bandwidth
Hello?
on your, yes, the bandwidth on your side seems to be low. That's why we are not able to hear you properly. Could I suggest you to put off the video and so that we can hear you more, without any break? Hello. Hello.
Is it any better by any chance?
Yes, it is much better. Please go ahead.
Yes, please. Yes, can you hear me?
Yes, Dr. Azizi, please go ahead. This is much better. Please go ahead.
Okay, great, great. I was talking about the this region, the violence against the minorities, the armed group of Taliban or the Arakan army or the East Turkestan separatists or any other armed group. We saw that the COVID-19 had an impact on the operations and the methods they have been using. Now, we all know that Afghanistan, unfortunately, has been in complex conflict for over 40 years. The conflict of Afghanistan has domestic, regional, as well as international dimensions. To examine the critical linkages between peace and conflict and to explain how regional development is conceivable, to argue in the next 10 minutes, Afghanistan, but it is for the region and beyond. Last, the goal of this presentation is not to be utopian, to present facts, make recommendations that are mostly built upon initiatives already in place, or that can already be perceived. So, a peaceful and stable Afghanistan will become a reason for South Asian countries to cooperate instead of confronting. This year on Feb 29th, the US and Taliban signed a peace deal that is paving the way for intra-Afghan dialogue and will ultimately result that this peace in Afghanistan contains a number of complicated themes of proposals and negotiations. And luckily or unfortunately, is not meant to discuss those details. As far as the US and the NATO member countries are building their foundation of argument on the withdrawal of their forces from Afghanistan is based on what the signed deal. Afghanistan will not become the haven of terrorism again. Now, the question is that what is next? From my perspective, the start of the Afghan dialogue is the next step, where the agenda will be finalized and timeline of a peace government or peace council will be a ceasefire by both sides. Intra-Afghan dialogue will be a platform where discussions will take place on the systems of the government, the role of Islam, the new constitution of Afghanistan, the war crimes and human rights violations, the disarmament and reintegration, and the arrangements for the post-peace government. Now, to be very precise, I would like to mention a couple of factors that make the Afghan peace durable. On the domestic dimension, the political fabrics and ideologies, the economic interests, the social and ethnic deprivation, the Afghan peace durable, or regional factors to mention in particular Iran, Pakistan, India, Middle East, Central Asian countries, and Russia. The factors include proxy wars, the rivalries, the economic interests, the hegemonies, the ideological preferences, terrorism as a tool of interest saving, and the economic corridors, including the Belt Road Initiative. Now, the regional factors seem very conflicting. However, I understand that at the macro level, they are manageable. The region is for a strong government with economic and political in Afghanistan, either because the fact that they or they see economic prosperity and the prosperity of Afghanistan. Unfortunately, we do have the exception of Pakistan at this stage. Pakistan has hardly shown interest in the equilibrium with any of its neighbors, particularly with India and Afghanistan. Pakistan sees aggressive approach and has always attempted for failed becoming big brother within the region when it comes to Afghanistan in particular. But Afghanistan on its own has always bravely under every regime has confronted such attitude. So when we talk about the impact of challenges that exist in South Asia, our region is richly endowed in nature and civilization. But all the member countries are facing daunting challenges, such as extreme poverty, weak governance, non-responsive political systems, lack of connectivity, lack of energy, security threats and terror, and unfortunately, widespread human sufferings. Now, a peaceful and stable Afghanistan could become a source of these problems. And to exploit the region's vast natural and human potential for the collective security and prosperity of all nations. Let me also give you a perspective of different countries and regions and their particular interest in Afghanistan. When it comes to Iran, Iran wants their eastern borders to be secure. They want the empowerment of the Shia communities of Afghanistan. Iran has been supporting the jihadi parties and even the Taliban for their own economic interests. Iran with increased water rights from Afghanistan. India is looking for more soft power in center as well as North Afghanistan. They are looking for a strategic pivot in the Central Asian countries. They're looking for expanded trade and further connectivity. Pakistan is looking for the legitimacy of Taliban for political and economic dependency of Afghanistan. They want the Afghan policy towards India to be aligned with Islamabad preferences. Likewise, they are looking for increased water rights in Afghanistan. Empowerment in Afghanistan with strong guarantees of non-interference by the Afghan government. Pakistan is looking for additional from the West and also access to the natural resources of Afghanistan. China strategically want to have access to the natural resources of Afghanistan. They are looking for security of their economic interests, including the expansion of the BRI and the New Silk Road. And they are also looking for non-interference guarantee towards East Turkestan separatists. For Russia, it is very clear they want to be valued for their hegemony. They don't want the terrorists to be on the borders of the Central Asian countries. They are looking for fair share of the narco band. They are looking forward for security projects in Central Asia. Now, the Middle East interests are also very interesting. They want minimum role for Iranian ideological interferences. The Middle Eastern countries are looking more for the empowerment of the Sunni Muslims. And they want to keep away the Arab Islamists from their capitals. I'm sorry. For the Central Asian countries, I think they want to keep the terror factors away. Sorry. From their borders, initiate joint economic projects and linkage Asian markets and South Asian markets.
Hello.
Sir, you're not audible.
Dr. Azizi? Dr. Azizi, you are there?
He's on mute. I'll ask him to unmute.
Yes.
So please unmute yourself. You might, yeah.
I'm here. Can you hear me again?
Yes, sir. You're probably on.
Dr. Zizi, you have 2 minutes.
Hello?
Yeah, you have 2 minutes.
You have my voice?
Yeah, I can hear you. I'm saying you have 2 more minutes to complete. Yeah.
Great, great. So, okay, looking at the policy, will play a supportive role in the expansion of the new Chinese dream, in resolving the Kashmir dispute, playing a positive role in Iran nuclear program management, and also to give the confidence to the Russians in regards to their political and economic hegemony in the Central Asian countries. Now, all the countries that are having interest in the region and beyond region, be it China, Turkey, India, Iran, Pakistan, Central Asian countries, Bangladesh, Nepal, Sri Lanka, in the Afghan peace, be it the physical connectivity troops, or be it the digital towards gains and compensation for all the South and Central Asian states, even to countries beyond their
Dr. Azizi, you there?
regrettably, the Afghan peace process fails, then annually the Afghan economy will be losing around $20 billion, and the region will be suffering with USD 150 to 200 billions annually. Thank you very much. That was it.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Azizi, for giving us another look or additional look into a very complex Afghan peace process, which is dynamic and going on as we talk about it right now. We move over to the next presenter, Jay Nishant. Jay Nishant, Mr. Jay Nishant.
Yeah, I'm here.
Yeah, thank you very much. Mr. Jay Nishant is the president of the Nepal Democracy Foundation, and he will be speaking again on a very pertinent issue, two strategies and projects or mega projects, or however you might term it, which is impacting across regions and has led to a number of countries, both small and big, to recalibrate and reorient their approaches and strategies. He'll be speaking about Nepal's self-imposed dilemma with BRI and IPS. The floor is yours, Mr. Jay Nishant. You have 15 minutes.
Thank you, Chair. And so good to see my friend Azizi from Afghanistan. Looks like you are having a sore throat, Azizi. And also I would like to extend my heartfelt thanks to Dr. Pramod Jaishpal, who I know personally and who is instrumental in organizing all these events. These events are proving wonderful for the scholars, for the experts, even for the policymakers and lawmakers. Everybody who is in Nepal and finding a time to go through these events are finding it extremely useful. So very happy to see Dr. Pramod Jaishpal doing such a noble job. He is doing a great service. And I also extend my good afternoon, or rather good morning still, to all the participants over here. Can I have my slides over there? Or let me try it myself. Yeah, are my slides visible?
Yes, sir, they're visible. No, your screen is visible, not the slides exactly.
Oh, just a second.
Please go to your slide, then it will be visible. Please run your slide and then.
My slides are not visible.
Okay, then I'll run it for you.
Okay. Please do that from that end. Great. Okay. Okay, so my topic for the presentation is Nepal's self-imposed dilemma with Belt and Road Initiative and Indo-Pacific strategy. Next slide, please. Actually, the two strategic options that the world is exposed to, more so this region, Belt and Road Initiative and Indo-Pacific strategy, are giving a tough time to the policymakers, to the decision makers, to the politicians, and many others in South Asia and Southeast Asia, because these are almost two conflicting strategies, and it would be very difficult for one country to either go for the one or try to juggle between the two. And Nepal being pitted between the two Asian giants, India and China, and also having a very friendly relationship with the USA, I think is not in an enviable situation if Nepal has to choose between these two strategic options. Next slide, please. Next. Okay, let me show you this map. This is of 2015. And if you look at it carefully, you will find there is no line or dot that is passing through Nepal. That says Nepal was not a part of any Silk Road routes, or Nepal was not even considered originally when this One Belt, One Road was conceived or projected. Next. This is just another map. I just wanted to have, you to have a view of, let's say, a more updated BRI positioning. And even over here, you don't see anything passing through Nepal. Next page. So that refers to the fact that Nepal was never a part of the original and the most popular Silk routes that we talk about. But Nepal had a very active trade link with Tibet. If you have been to Kathmandu, you can see a lot of these temples having the golden robes, or you can find the golden windows, the golden gates over here on a number of those temples and palaces. And you might wonder that Nepal might have a lot of gold mine. But the fact is, Nepal yet has to discover even a single gold mine. All the gold that you see over here in Nepal has basically come from Tibet, because at one time, Nepal was extremely thriving in terms of trade with Tibet. And there was this practice that Nepal used to mint the coins for Tibet, and the Tibetan coins used to be of gold and silver. But there is this very popular story that says that Chairman Mao had promised our then King Virendra in 1973, that he would like to build a rail from Lhasa to Kathmandu. And as you can see, a lot of talk is going on about the Nepal-China railway network. Perhaps that is finding some inspiration from that original promise from Chairman Mao. And from the time 2013, when BRI was officially launched, Nepal has been making regular attendance to all the events taking place either in Beijing or anywhere else in the world. But everything hasn't been so hunky-dory in case of Nepal. Historically, as Nepal has been inclined to India, and also Nepal has been very actively involved with the US and EU relationship, there was a kind of attempt on behalf of India, USA, and EU to keep Nepal away from BRI. But when the pressure from the north became very unbearable, the then Finance Minister, Dr. Ramcharan Mahato, went to Beijing and signed the first understanding with OBOR in December 2014. And then officially on May 12, 2017, the Memorandum of Understanding on Cooperation under the Belt and Road Initiative was signed in Beijing when Prime Minister Oli was there. Next. So Nepal was in a stage, or rather in a status of confusion, what to propose and what not to propose. So Nepal first drew about 35 possible projects, but after having some consultation with the Chinese side, it was brought down to number 9. And there were 3 roads, 2 hydroelectricity plants, 1 cross-border railway, 1 cross-border transmission line, and 1 technical institution. Currently, as this is inked between Nepal and China, the 2 countries are working with the theme of Trans-Himalayan Multi-Dimensional Connectivity Network, THMCN. This has several components. Primarily, the components are in the form of those economic corridors that run from north to south in Nepal. But there is one very important, powerful, very broadly talked and much hyped Nepal-China cross-border railways. At this stage, there is not much work done at the ground level, but all the terms that we have been hearing all over the world, like debt trap or crisis in balance of payment, or China's sphere of influence, or project of future Chinese dominance, are as widely talked in Nepal as they are talked anywhere in the world. Since these projects are going to be extremely expensive, there are 2 notions in Nepal. One is that Nepal should not be building anything on its own unless there is this 100% grant arrangement from China. But there is another school of thought that says that since these projects, if are done properly, can be even economically making good senses. So if there is a time for Nepal to make some invest, Nepal should be ready to make some invest. But the popular belief as of now in Nepal is that Nepal should not be making any investments, but if there is, let's say, 100% grant from China, Nepal should be happily accepting it. And earlier, India was as worried with Nepal signing into BRI as it has been with China-Pakistan Economic Corridor. And that's why India at one time offered Nepal a couple of very attractive projects, including one very tempting Raxaul-Kathmandu railway network. But as of now, looks like India perhaps has reconciled with the facts that Nepal going into BRI is perhaps a new reality. Next. This is a map that you can see that there is an active road link, and also there is a railway network that has been built up to Lhasa and has come all the way up to Shigatse. Some survey is taking place. You can find some engineers on these very rough and high terrains in Trans-Himalayan regions. They are making some assessments, both in terms of topographical reading and also on the financial parameters. And hopefully there would be some concrete steps taken to connect Nepal with the railway network that comes from China and that already has come up to Shigatse. But that is one of the most difficult terrains in the world, and especially when the railway network would be entering into Nepal territory, is going to be extremely, extremely challenging. That means it's going to be extremely difficult to build, and also possibly it's going to be very difficult, very expensive. And also there is a plan that that has been proposed from the Chinese side that perhaps that red link would like to go to 2 very touristically important sites in Nepal, Pokhara and Lumbini. Next. So there are some tangible developments so far. The agreements on paper are concerned between these 2 countries. I would like to skip this slide, but what I want to say is this. Just look at the last bullet over here. Consecutively and during all the past prime ministers in Nepal, be it Sushil Koirala, or be it KP Oli, or be it Prachanda, or be it Sher Bahadur Deuba, Nepal has made some ground in terms of making some progress with its relationship with China, both politically and also towards the direction of Belt and Road Initiative. So this basically hints that there is a kind of consensus in Nepal's all political actors. They may come from different political parties, that perhaps BRI is something that Nepal should seriously be considering. Next. Now let me move on to Indo-Pacific strategy. In my presentation, I'm strictly limiting myself to make it more useful for the young scholars, as I have been told by the organizers. So I'm not talking anything very lofty, but like the nationalism issues of China, or let's say the great civilizational classes or something like that. I'm just trying to have this build-up of BRI and IPS in Nepal. And I'm just trying to help you with some chronological events. So with IPS or Indo-Pacific strategy, Nepal has a kind of mixed opinion. Many believe the sole objective of IPS is to contain China. Some even go to an extent of saying that perhaps this is only to counter China's Belt and Road Initiative. But when we talk about Indo-Pacific strategy, there is not much concern as per IPS, but there is this particular project that has been proposed by MCC, Millennium Challenge Corporation, that is an US government's entity, and this is directly linked to Indo-Pacific strategy. And under this MCC, there is this 100% grant assistance of $500 million that is supposed to be spent in electrical and infrastructure projects in Nepal. So whenever Nepal talks about IPS, it normally makes a sense through MCC, as MCC is something that has created a lot of uproar in Nepal. A section of MCC, and how I want to put it like this. As at this stage, Nepal has the largest party in the form of Nepal Communist Party that commands a near 2/3 majority in the parliament. And there is a visible rift within this party among the leaders. One set of leaders that is led by Prime Minister Oli himself, he is very much in favor of MCC, but the other set of leaders that is led by the former Prime Minister Prachanda, there is a kind of conflicting opinion. If Prime Minister Oli says that MCC is good for Nepal, this should be accepted. The faction led by former Prime Minister Prachanda says that perhaps there has to be a reconsideration before MCC is accepted in Nepal. But the main opposition, Nepali Congress, is very much in support of MCC because it was Nepali Congress's finance minister who originally signed the agreement with MCC. Many believe China could be behind the opposition to MCC, as Beijing strongly opposes the US Indo-Pacific strategy. But Chinese ambassador to Nepal has openly and clearly said that China welcomes any foreign economic assistance to Nepal, even if that is from MCC. Next. But as far as the USA is concerned, there are mixed signals coming from USA with regard to Millennium Challenge Corporation or MCC. I'll read for you. US Ambassador Randy Berry on September 27, 2019 said that the Indo-Pacific strategy is simply the name we have given to everything we do in the region, and security is an important part of ensuring the Indo-Pacific region remains free and open. That is not new. US Embassy, through a press release on January 17, 2020, it said very explicitly that there is no military component to the MCC. In fact, US law prohibits it. But on May 14, 2019, David J. Rance, acting Deputy Assistant Secretary of State for South Asia, said that the assistance package of $500 million earmarked by the US for Nepal is one of the most important initiatives as a part of the IPS. So the USA is giving two conflicting, but at the same time, mixed kind of signals that MCC doesn't directly connect to IPS, but the other version is that yes, anything and everything that happens in Nepal or in this region is of course a part of IPS. And Nepal's social media and public opinion are divided, and you can find a kind of social media war over here, and there are hundreds of videos uploaded, some in favor, but mostly against the projects that is supported by MCC. Next. But let me give you what exactly is happening on ground in Nepal. All of you might be knowing Nepal is a least developed country, and it wants to promote itself to a next layer, and that would be, let's say, by 2030. but Nepal ranks very poorly in most of the global economic indicators, including that one of the infrastructure. It ranks 119th out of 137. And even in terms of, let's say, availability of per capita electricity, or in terms of Nepal's fitness of doing businesses, human development.
30 minutes.
How much?
30 minutes.
30 minutes?
Hello?
How much I'm left with?
Sorry. Half a minute, 30 seconds.
Oh, 30 seconds.
Yeah.
Okay, give me 2 minutes, okay, so that I can complete the next 2 slides. So there is this poor track record of Nepal's economic performances in global arena, and that's why people believe that whether it is IPS or BRI, Nepal should not be looking too much into politics. Rather, since they are of great economic assistances, it should be accepted. Next slide, please. Okay, so here are my final recommendations. As I said earlier, whether it is IPS or BRI, since they make a part of foreign policy of USA and China, even if you accept a single dollar from any of these 2 countries, it's going to be a part of their foreign policy. So Nepal should not be really worried whether it is a part of IPS or not, or whether it is a part of grand Chinese design or not. Since the money is coming to Nepal, it should be accepted. China's policy towards Nepal always has been very balanced and non-interfering. China has always been very sensitive that Nepal is connected much closer to India for its political, historical, cultural, familial, and many other regions. So every time in the past, there was an opportunity when China could have conflicted with India over Nepal. China didn't do that. But in recent time, particularly in past couple of years, and especially from the time in Nepal, when there is this Nepal Communist Party led government, looks like there is a shift in China's policy towards Nepal. And also Nepal also has been very, very respectful to both its neighbors. But the present government of NCP is slightly moving closer to China and disturbing the status quo. And that might pose a challenge in future. What I want to say at the end is this. This proposal of MCC that consists of $500 million, and this is 100% grant with no strings attached, and this is going to help with Nepal with a very important transmission and network. I think be it any project of BRI or of MCC, if they make a sense to Nepal in terms of economic calculations, Nepal should be accepting it. At this stage, when Nepal is ranked as one of the bottom 10 to 15 countries, Nepal should not be worrying too much what is there in the original document, either of the US foreign policy or of the Chinese foreign policy. If these are substantial, sizable, tangible, really useful, practically and pragmatically beneficial for Nepal, Nepal should be accepting, provided it is coming through BRI or through IPS. But the first and foremost condition is that those projects should make economic senses. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Nishant, for giving us, a perspective into the varying opinions and, the very idea of creating political consensus inside Nepal, and fairly presenting a paper that I think should clearly clarify as putting Nepal first, in the Indo-Pacific and BRI, and not any other country. Thank you, Mr. Nishant. We go to the next speaker, Dr. Dhananjay Tripathi. Dhananjay?
Yes.
Yeah, thank you. So he's a senior assistant professor at the Department of International Relations at South Asian University, and a very good friend from my days in GNU. And he'll be speaking on post-COVID South Asia and possibilities for South Asian integration. On the 13th minute, Dhananjay, I'll be showing hand, that means you have 2 minutes. The floor is yours. Thank you.
Thank you, Monish. First of all, let me thanks NIICE and Pramod for giving me this opportunity to be part of this, what he calls as Kumbh of international relation discussion. So many speakers, I really agree with Pramod that it is kind of a kumbh for IR scholars, at least from this region. So, and I hope that he will keep on organizing such events in future as well. Now, today I'm going to talk about South Asia, how the post-COVID South Asia, what are the prospects of regionalism in South Asia. Before getting into this topic, let me flag a couple of points that are very important when we discuss about South Asian regionalism. One very important point is that it is one of the most divided region as far as the politics and economy is concerned. Culturally, we are very united. We know the food habits of each other. We know social, cultural aspects of each other, but politically and economically, we are very divided. So can this COVID-19, which is being seen as one of the emergencies for the international community, how South Asia is going to deal with it? Are we going to go for regionalism, or are we going to stand divided as we were in the past? So that is the important question. With this, I will flag another very important point, that the international economy is going to decline, and this is IMF estimate by 3%. South Asian economy over last 2 decades were highly integrated with global order, not regionally, but at an international level. And that is also going to decline because international economy is going to decline. So that is going to affect the South Asian economies as well. Third point, which is very important, a number of South Asian economies, including India, is highly dependent on remittance. So with this COVID thing coming up, and all the national economies, the different national economies of the world, are going to face some sort of economic crisis. They are already in economic crisis, and the workers are coming from these countries back to their home, particularly in South Asia. This remittance is going to decline. So there are a couple of points. One, that the South Asian countries have to invest more in the social sector. Number two, your international trade, the export that we were doing, is going to decline. Number three, your remittance is going to decline. So what is the way out? With these points, flagging these points, I will come to the main topic now. So I will call South Asia as a region of contradictions. And why it is a region of contradiction? Because if you look at South Asia, in the last, as I already said, that in the last couple of decades, we have seen the economic growth really doing well, but it has not translated into economic development. And by economic development, I mean the overall development of the society. So we are very close to sub-Saharan Africa as far as the global hunger index is concerned. We are just very close, except for Sri Lanka. All other South Asian countries are out of top 100 ranking in Human Development Index. This region has two nuclear powers who disagree on most of the issues and unwilling to resolve their differences. These realities make South Asia a region full of contradictions. Now, what is to be done? I would like to point a World Bank report which says that the future of South Asian economy depends on how well you organize yourself regionally. That World Bank report was of 2007, and I think, as I flagged some points initially, I think in light of these points, it is now more necessary for us to unite. I needless to emphasize how regionalism helped the economic revival of post-war Europe. Even Southeast Asia is an example to show that regional integration positively contributed to the development of the region. There are several merits of regionalism, but it is a voluntary process. Let's not get into that. It's a voluntary process. It cannot be thrusted from the top, although could be pushed from below. Regionalism theoretically stands for sharing and pooling of sovereignty. And the South Asia, which is a post-colonial region, is very sensitive on the idea of sovereignty and politically stand for non-interference into domestic affairs. Such a position on sovereignty by South Asian countries reflect their general anxiety of developing countries. The point here is that things have changed in the region over the last couple of decades. South Asian countries link themselves with the global economies, open their market, and move far away from the old days of protectionism. Despite this openness, regional mistrust continues, and in some cases, it has grown over the years. One of the things that I would like to point out here is that whenever we talk of South Asian regionalism, you cannot avoid the India question. And that is my next point I'm going to focus. So what is the role of India? Due to geographic size, demographic, economic power, and strategic depth, India is perceived by many as regional hegemon. But any such analysis requires critical engagement. Let us objectively evaluate India's role in South Asian integration. New Delhi initially ignored the region. The biggest architect of the post-independent foreign policy of India, the Prime Minister Jawaharlal Nehru, was internationalist. He had a very different approach for the region and favored Asian regionalism. South Asia doesn't draw his attention that much. Jawaharlal Nehru's faith in Asian regionalism was shattered after the Chinese invasion in 1962. Thereafter, he showed willingness to side with the US and lost interest in some of his foreign policy narratives. Not only China, India twice faced aggression from Pakistan in 1965 and 1971. In 1962, India got a setback. 65 and 71, India decisively defeated Pakistan. Afterward, Pakistan avoided any direct military confrontation except for Kargil, but waged a proxy war against India. The Chinese invasion, aggression from Pakistan, and continued proxy war supported by Pakistan shaped a part of Indian imagination of South Asia. The recent event at LOC and LAC, that is line of actual controls, only keep adding to India's security concerns. No wonder successive Indian government remain cautious in their approach to South Asian regionalism, mainly due to Pakistan factor. At the same time, India has fairly good neighborly ties with other South Asian countries. While one can take several other factors into consideration, I will not get into that. Jay has already pointed out between India and Nepal. So there are several other factors, but except for Pakistan, I don't think that there is a major deadlock on issues which cannot be resolved between India and other South Asian countries. Of course, Pakistan, the Kashmir issue is a very big one. So what are the prospects of South Asian regionalism? A couple of necessary points I will again like to put here. That when we say South Asian integration, we are a latecomer. We started in 1985. If you look at Europe, they started in 1950. Southeast Asia started in 1960. So we are quite a latecomer as far as the regionalism is concerned. We started the process in 1985. Second, largely we are regarded as a closed economies. Therefore, hesitant to endorse any idea of economic regionalism. Most of the South Asian economies were protectionist, were socialist. So forget about regionalism. They were not even open to the international market. Both these are our past. We are in 2020 and regionalization process started some 3.5 decades back. So even if we are latecomer, we are almost like 3.5 decades have started the process. South Asian economy are in race with others to attract foreign capital. We are no longer a protectionist economies. The only point that remain unchanged is the security apprehensions on the India-Pakistan's rigid position on Kashmir. I will not get into the Kashmir issue because many experts have given a number of solutions which these two countries have never accepted. We are also in an interesting phase where experts are not sure about the post-COVID world order. How many have written an obituary of globalization and showed a preference for regionalism. C. Raja Mohan, excellent article in Indian Express a couple of months back. He has said that the borderless world is going to be a phrase. It is not going to be a reality in the post-COVID world order. While globalization was under stress in the last few years, COVID-19 may expedite its complication. Regionalism is a solution and likely to give respite to the post-pandemic ailing economies of the world. South Asia doesn't have a good track record on the human development front, made some advances in the last few decades, but presently reeling under uncertainty. Every South Asian country needs to grow to support its citizens. There are big Chinese investment in the region, and in all likelihood, it will continue, but with stringent conditions. Even in countries like Pakistan, there are voices on There are voices on rising Chinese debt. Over-dependence on China is not a good idea. And some of the South Asian countries are already realizing it. Sri Lanka, there is a realization. Hambantota, I'll not get into details of all those things, but there is a realization that over-dependence on China is not a good idea. So what is the easy solution for South Asian countries? The easy solution is to regionalize. Going by the experience of suggestions of regional cooperation in South Asia is easier said than done, but the timing for taking some bold decision is most opportune. Indian Prime Minister already gave a call for South Asian countries to join hand to face the socio-economic challenges arising due to massive disruption caused by COVID-19 pandemic. COVID-19 emergency fund is a step in the right direction. Although Pakistan raised some objection to the procedures of COVID-19 emergency fund, the rest of the South Asia is united on this issue. Rome is not built in a day, and the prospect of South Asian regionalism will not going to change in next few years. Let us not expect any miracle that is going to happen in next 6-7 years, even if we start realizing that we have to regionalize. There is a need for a very sensitive as well as an active approach, and in this India has to take a lead. As I said, that we cannot discuss South Asian regionalism unless we discuss the India question. India has the economic capability to undertake some relevant initiative in the region, as already reflected in the COVID-19 emergency fund. India over the years also acquired a development role in the region, helping in rebuilding of Afghanistan, financing several relevant projects in other South Asian countries. New Delhi showed willingness to promote regional cooperation as underlined in the non-reciprocity of the Gujarat Doctrine and the neighborhood first policy of the present NDA government. While these policies are appreciated by many, there are also criticism about the delivery deficit of Indian projects. And this is a major criticism of Indian projects in the South Asia. At times, slowly depending on bureaucracy for South Asian policy also makes things very rigid in this region. New Delhi must improve on these fronts and should reach out to the different sections in South Asia. And here I mean not only state to state, but academician, journalist, activist. New Delhi has to reach out to these different sections in South Asia. There is a need for a wider engagement with academia, media person, activist, and artist. Unfortunately, this is absent in India's regional approach as of now. New Delhi must learn something from the European example, where informal activities are equally endorsed and supported by the European Union institutions. We cannot ignore that South Asia is also a region of identity contestations and partitions. And these partitions are still in our minds. We have to prosper, but at the same time need to celebrate our commonalities. So let us not become insensitive towards some of the growing sort of nationalism in some of the South Asian countries. This is very, very important. Yes, I will sum up now. Only such an effort can truly integrate South Asia. So state to state as well as different sections of the society. Other South Asian countries must also change their outlook towards India. We need to move away from these contradictions that has obstructed the South Asian regionalism. Time and again, international agencies, World Bank, I refer to World Bank, IMF has also said this again, time and again. International agencies repose faith in the potential of this region. Let us start the process, reforming the region forever. And this is the right time. I already said it. COVID-19, I initially flagged what are the challenges that are going to be. We are a region of challenges. More challenges are going to come up for us. The way out is regionalism. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dhananjay. You have clearly touched upon point of reference, which is a perennial sort of discussion in South Asian foreign policy deliberations and IR discourse. Given your excellent work on border studies, probably the question and answer session, I'll come back on that. Next, in the line of speakers, and last but not the least, we have Dr. Yasmin Satar, who is a faculty of political science at the Prince of Songkhla University in Thailand. And she is going to also speak on a very, very pertinent issue, which perhaps is not as regularly discussed as it could be. And Thailand, I think, despite the stereotypes of tourism destination and all those things, is a country with its own complexity and dynamics of politics, given the change of guard at the palace and the kind of political orientation and the school children's protest that has been doing the social media rounds. So without further ado, I welcome Dr. Sutter. The floor is yours, ma'am. And as always, I'll show a hand at 13 minutes. Right? Thank you. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you very much. Actually, I have some slides as well. Would you mind to share? If not, it's fine as well, because I have some picture and some graph to see, for all of you to see.
Paki, can we handle this?
Sure, sir. Ma'am, can you mail me the slides?
I mailed last night already.
Okay, so Pramod sir, are you here?
So if there's
just give me a minute, I'll get back.
Sure. Okay, I will just talk during this time to wait for the slide. Actually, I have seen the schedule, and most of the cases are basically in South Asians as a region, which of course I am familiar with, because since I'm also one of a JNU alum, and when I have done my master. But anyway, and speaking of regional politics, focusing in Southeast Asia is quite different. And to understand as a region, to understand each country may need. But one of the things that seems to be quite familiar in this region, I would say that we could see kind of or likely to be authoritarian way, I would say kind of that, to handle with the COVID-19 during this pandemic. However, my presentations will be much specific in the country which I have come from, and I have been working here. I would say that Thailand could be one of the case study in terms of the impact of COVID-19 toward domestic politics quite well. So may I bring you to the much smaller picture, and I hope like experience here could be another jigsaw to fulfill the large picture of the impact of the COVID-19 as in a pandemic world. You have a slide? If not, it's fine.
I've been trying to contact sir, but
sure.
He's
fine.
not taking the, yeah.
Okay, so it's fine.
I'll get back
Okay.
to you.
Okay, so my main discussions here today will be based on two questions. The first thing is what is happening in Thailand amidst the spreading of the COVID-19, and what are the challenges for Thai politics in post-pandemic era. I would say that we are now amidst the COVID-19, but Thailand, if we see the statistic, we are not have that much of infected case of COVID-19 in Thailand. We have the case in March and April, and during the mid of May, the cases has nearly become zero. But yesterday we find a one new case. So just that. So I would say that the curve of spreading of the COVID-19 in Thailand right now is not that much high, but we can settle on that. The question is, what is the policy that Thailand has been using during COVID-19 and make the number of infected people that's become drop out? Of course, I would say that it will have like two of the factors that bring about this dropout number. Okay, slide has been come out. So yeah, maybe I will show you the third slide, please. Yes. Okay, if you see this third slide, you can see that right now the case is slow. It's dropped out. It's not that much high. And the next slide, please. And this one as well, the curve. You can see the curve is highest in March and April, but right now it's not that much. And the next slide, please. Okay. And the next slide, we can see that the death tolls of the people who have been affected is not that much high as well in Thailand. And the next one, please. Next one, please. Okay. And this one, we could say that actually, if we compare to other countries in the world, Thailand is ranking at 121st, and like from like around like nearly 200 countries in the world. So I would say it is not much. I will focus, next slide please, on the policy that Thailand has been used during the COVID-19. First, as I mentioned in the beginning, that most of the countries in Southeast Asia likely to use the authoritarian way to manage with the case of COVID-19. When COVID-19 came, they start to protect themselves, prevent themselves by using restrictions. First, we have an international travel restriction, medical supply regulations with restrict to limited for buying surgical masks and hand sanitizers as well. We have a lockdown, curfew, and provincial travel ban, which all of this is under what we call emergency decree. Yeah, we have emergency decree during COVID-19, which is not like, this should not be like that, okay? And we have to accept another thing that apart from the policy that the government has been doing, the health center, the public healthcare system of Thailand is helped very much in terms of dropping out the rates of COVID-19. So the rate of new cases gradually dropped throughout April, and by mid-May, the public has cooperated relatively well with health advisories, and the country's robust public health infrastructures has been created as a contributing factor to its relatively successful response, I would say like that. But it seems to be don't have any problem. We have not much of the people who have been affected, but why it's in which dimension that it affect to the politics in Thailand. So next slide, please. As a Thailand, we just have the election in the beginning of 2019, before COVID-19 has came several months. But the COVID-19 came and made the instability of the current government become much explicit, I would say like that. Lots of criticisms toward the current government has been emerged during the COVID-19, I would say. Because of what? Because though there was the election in 2019, it's one known as partly free and not fair one, and made the state-backed civil military partly won, and made the 2014 coup and 2014 to 2019 Janata leader Prayut Chan-o-cha become the prime minister again. Right now we have a prime minister who was elected, but he was ex-leader of the coup and ex-leader of the Janata. So we can say that the government has been supported by the military, And we can see that the case of the corruption has been seen and discussed, especially through online platform during the COVID-19 very much. One of the things that happened during this time is the dissolution of the pro-democracy Future Forward Party, which most of the young voters has selected this party. So the problem is when this party has been dissolute, the young generations and the young people start to question more and more towards their own government. With the enforcement of the lockdown emergency decree and a travel ban for all foreigners have been done in effect to the economic situation in the country, which become to be another main triggers to the big protests in July and spread to provinces nationwide and being held almost daily. Even today, we have a street protest in Thailand. We have a day by day. Apart from that, it's interesting to see that the Twitter and the Facebook groups were used for mobilize issues regarding to the questions on government in various aspects, like in the case of enforced disappearance that has been happened during the COVID-19 as well. The next slide, please. Even within the COVID-19 with the masks and another one, it's not this one yet. Okay. Even with the COVID-19, with the masks and social distancing and even the emergency decree, the street protest has been spreading across the countries like now. I would say that it's the first time after 2014's coup that can see this much large number of people who come out to the street and try to talk and to say something that they want. It's transformed to like a two-polar from red shirt and yellow shirt before the coup to anti-government led by youth movement. Also, we have like kind of a support of the current government side who come out to the street as well, but it's not that much. Mainly it will be young people and a youth movement who come out to the street, and not even in street, but in the school and in the university as well, that they try to show some of the sign to say that they want a better future for themselves. The protest has changed its form. Like it's not just like a 40 days come to a mob or 1 month or like an all long day in the mob, but it's kind of a series of protests. It's kind of flash mob that come together just a few hours and then just spreading and have it again and again. So it's kind of that. But one of the thing is that there is 3 demands that were given to the government from all around the countries. First is to the resignation of the cabinet and dissolution of the parliament. The second is stop threatening legal action to people who think differently from the government, and the drafting of new constitutions. And interestingly, that apart from like trying to say something to the government to be resigned, but the other issues have been brought up to discuss during the protest as well, like the abortion rights, authoritarianism in Thai schools, education reform, labor rights, military reforms, human rights, and even monarchy reforms, which is very, like in the past several years, we cannot think about that before. It's kind of a taboo in Thai, but it's come to the discussions openly and publicly in Thai society. So it's quite interesting that there are a lot of issues that once we haven't think about that. We think that it is our culture and our values in the society, but we start to think about that. And it starts with the young generations who try to question of these problems in the Thai society. One of the things is that we have a mob, so we have a street protest within emergency decrees law. Of course, like most of them has been arrested, but has been released as well in the few days after. So this is the thing that is happening in Thailand. Maybe next slide, please. I try to come up with some remarks that I have seen with this political movement that have been happened during the COVID-19. I would say that it's quite interesting to see that COVID pandemic is one of the tastes for a basic structure and stability of each country. I will not say that as a region, but as a country itself also is one of the big tests, either like a politics, economics, or other governing functions. COVID-19 is just a push factor that make the unstable structures that has been already happened in each of the country to be disrupted and even destroyed. New normal life of people, I think they should come together with the support of governments, especially in terms of economic and healthcare supports. Otherwise, it could bring to the question of who is govern us, and can there be a real leader of us, and what roles that the governors or the leaders should do in the crisis time as a COVID-19. So I would say I maybe sum up in this thing. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Khop Kun Krap. Thank you for opening a new window. As I said, it's not as highly highlighted as it should be. So without further ado, again, I just want to check before I begin the Q&A session that all our 4 speakers can be audible, can be seen online. Dr. Azizi, you are there? Dr. Azizi? Okay, while Dr. Azizi comes back online, I will, what I will do is I will try to paraphrase some of the questions that have come through the chat box and probably start by putting, let's say, 2 questions to each of the speakers. And once I'm done with the putting the questions to all the speakers, then I can come back and then allow some minutes for the speakers to respond to the questions. As I've said, I'm paraphrasing some of the questions that have come through the chat box. So since Dr. Azizi is not here, I'll put him last and probably start with Mr. Nishant. Given the kind of wide area of analysis that you have given, as I've said earlier, kind of conceptualizing this idea of putting Nepal first and then decide what is good for Nepal, whether irrespective of whether it is IPS or BRI. The first question that many people are asking to you is that if I put it this way, there's a lot of literature in IR about smaller countries which are materially less powerful, finding it profitable for themselves to hedge and balance between greater powers. And in this case, I think a lot of questions have been put on particularly China and India, and also including the United States. So the question could be that while it is beneficial and it's prudent and, let's say, realist for smaller countries to do so, what could be some of the limitations of doing so? What could be some of the challenges of doing so? And if I could put it this way, what kind of a cost smaller countries would have to pay if they were to sort of balance their interests among greater powers? That is the first question. The second question would be that is because we are talking about one BRI, which is primarily sort of connectivity project oriented, right? If you look at the number of projects. And the other one is IPS, which has started some deliberations on Blue Network and all those kind of connectivity projects, but has not really seen things on the ground in terms of really putting connectivity front and center. Much of the debate still happens on freedom of navigation operations in the Western Pacific and all those kind of things, and great power politics of US-China rivalry. So if we put these things together and put Nepal in the midst, and then correlate that to Nepal's membership, for example, in the BIMSTEC and the sub-regional sort of connectivity projects which are being envisioned, how do you see Nepal sort of aligning its interests amidst these permutations and combinations of connectivity projects and strategies like this? So these are the two questions for Mr. Nissan. I will now go to Dhananjay. Dhananjay, as I said earlier, I will certainly pick a question on the excellent work you have been doing on South Asian borderlands. But let me start with something that you mentioned during your presentation, which was the politics of identity contestations, and you tried to sort of correlate European identity politics and South Asian identity politics. So my question to that is, how do we correlate the challenges that we see in South Asia in terms of, let's say, the Westphalian national boundaries that were constructed in the post-decolonization sort of a period? Because you had this notion of the British Empire sort of breaking down, and many of these countries sort of trying to construct a national identity for themselves. And in the process, sort of like making it important to put across this idea that, well, Nepal, Bhutan, any of these things, we might have had cultural sameness, but that's different from, let's say, national uniqueness, right? So how do we see this playing out, and what kind of a challenge does this pose on South Asian integration that we are talking about? The other thing is, because we were talking about COVID to a large extent, which many are seeing as kind of opening a window of opportunity despite the kind of hardships that it has brought otherwise. And you see that despite the emergency COVID fund and all those things, it did not take even 1 month, for example, for Nepal and India to start a new chapter on Kalapani and Lipuli Lake, right? So how do you correlate, let's say, if there were opportunities for us in terms of coming together to fight non-traditional security threats, but still you have this more protracted sovereignty-related traditional differences, which becomes which overwhelms, right, the opportunity. So how do you put these two things? That is for you. Coming to Dr. Sutter, I put it this way. I still remember, like, when I was a JNU student and hanging out with friends from Thailand in the Thai embassy. One of the first things that fascinated me was the young Thai people's love for Rama IX, or Bhumibol Adulyadej, King Bhumibol Adulyadej. So we always used to hypothesize that you have so much love for Bhumibol, King Bhumibol, that what will happen after him? And that used to be a debate over chai and samosa in JNU also, like what happens after Bhumibol. So what I have seen in Thailand, and correct me if I'm wrong, the red shirt, yellow shirt fight, and the coming and the end of the Shinawatra family sort of a thing, and what all we have seen, how much do you see this change of guard at the palace impacting politics and economics in Thailand, and what do you see as the future? You have dealt a little bit on that, but I would still, and also I would tie that up with the fact that you come from a university, Songkhla, in southern Thailand. How would you tell our audience about issues of federalism in Thailand, whereby we see that there are issues in southern Thailand? There are issues of security and in the border areas of southern Thailand with Malaysia. So how do you sort of put this across? And maybe the second question, I would put it across as a foreign policy thing and tie up with many of the presenters, because they have been presenting about BRI and IPS and all those things, that Thailand is the center for one of the largest land exercises for the US, which is Gold Cobra. And Thailand has been seen in that way. But given the kind of push and pull which is happening in other parts of ASEAN countries also, how do you see Thailand in the midst of BRI and this Indo-Pacific strategy debate? How would you locate Thailand within that? Do we have Dr. Azizi yet, or we can go ahead with? Okay, we'll go ahead with the responses from the speakers. Mr. Nissan can go first, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Let me just say a few words in terms of Nepal's geopolitical and its strategical importance. I think Nepal's strategical importance comes from a couple of factors. First, though a small country, but it is very strategically located between the two very important and nuclearly powered countries, India and China. Second, Nepal is just next to Tibet. So that also makes its importance high, at least for the Americans and for the Europeans. But third and most important, that may not be, I think, might have been felt as of now. Nepal's parliament is commanded by a near 2/3 majority by the communist parties, or you can say Communist Party. And when I say Communist Party, they are real Communist parties, because one of them hasn't been, it's not been too long that they were hardcore Maoist insurgents. So their idea of a totalitarian regime is not gone away, though Nepal has a democratic constitution. So it's just a near 2/3 majority. I fear the day that when there will be a 2/3 majority and then they can play around with the constitution, they might try to go for some misadventures, and that might slide Nepal towards, let's say, some kind of totalitarian regime. So I think because of these three regions, I think there should be enough interest for Nepal, being close to Tibet, being between India and China, and at the verge of maybe sliding towards a totalitarian regime. Having said that, I think Nepal is not in an enviable situation when it comes to decide its foreign policy. On one side, you have the largest democracy, India. On the other hand, you have China, that is a capitalist system, but with Chinese characteristics. So it's going to be a tough tug of war between these two countries that Nepal would find very difficult to balance. And let's not forget, America is very actively present in Nepal since last several decades. But I'm not as worried about these situations as much I'm worried about the present characteristics of Nepal's government. As I said, it's a Nepal Communist Party-led government, and it's very rapidly and very aggressively and very swiftly moving towards China. That means whatever has been the status quo that has been maintained by Nepal until now, I think that will be challenged. And then it's going to be very difficult for Nepal either to remain neutral or to side to one or the other countries. So I think Nepal is in this very difficult situation whereby the things are going to be very challenging. At the same time, I just said that what can be the cost? I think the cost can be enormous if Nepal doesn't play its card very smartly. But I would still like to reiterate, Nepal has maintained its sovereignty and its integrity over the past 2 centuries. Nepal was never a part of any of the colonies. So that goes in saying that if Nepal can play its card well as it has done in past couple of centuries, Nepal still can do very well for itself. But one wrong move, I think Nepal can move towards something that I would not like to imagine at this stage. So yes, there can be a huge cost if Nepal doesn't play its card very smartly. Secondly, how Nepal should be managing and should be benefiting from the other regional associations like BIMSTEC and few others. Often when I take my classes of international relations and international businesses, what I say is just by subscribing to a gym, you don't build your biceps and triceps and your abs. You have to go to a gym, spend some time over there, do some sweating, only then you can build your muscles. So Nepal has been a part of these different regional or global or international associations or these subnational bodies, be it SARC or be it BMSTEC or be it WTO or many others. But unfortunately, Nepal hasn't been able to benefit much from them. For an example, in past about 15 years, Nepal's share of industrial sector into its GDP has gone down from 16 to about 6%. So had Nepal been really smart and thinking smartly to benefit from these regional and international organizations, then I think Nepal should have done much better. So I think the challenge is there in terms of Nepal's own policies and how the existing policies are implemented. So as of now, I would have to say Nepal hasn't really been benefited by being a member of any of these regional or global associations. Rather, Nepal has driven itself towards becoming a completely remittance dependent country. And as I was hearing it from Yasmin, when your economy is very dependent on remittance, and also I think Dhananjay was trying to indicate it, then you run a very high risk. And in COVID, it's been felt very strongly in Nepal because many of these Nepalese workers who are abroad have stopped sending remittances, and also many of them either have flown to Nepal or trying to fly back to Nepal. So that's going to put Nepal's economy under an extra stress. So yes, Nepal has been a member of these different regional and global associations, but Nepal unfortunately hasn't been able to benefit much from them. And I don't see anything changing drastically in near future.
Thank you, Jay, for your no holds barred responses and a very clear enunciation of your opinion and views. Now, the floor is yours, Dhananjay. Dhananjay, please unmute.
Sorry.
Yeah.
Thank you. I think both the questions are related. The first question about the identity issues. Yeah, I agree that we are the post-colonial and a post-partition region, and a lot of experts have written that most of the time, what we do is try to project what we are not, like how we are not common with our neighbors. So that is one of the problems, most prominently between India and Pakistan. But of late, we have seen that this question or this issue is emerging up between different South Asian countries as how we are not close to each other. But that is a state-to-state narrative. I think there is a lot of commonalities and people know each other very well. I have experiences of teaching to the Pakistani students and meeting a number of Pakistanis outside the country, and you don't find that narrative that much. So that is one point at the cultural level. Yes, but this narrative has to undergo a change, and the change will not come until unless the state will recognize that there is a benefits of integration. Till date, I think, unfortunately, what had happened in this region that none of the states, including India, have really worked on the potential of regionalism. Our inter-regional trade is almost like 5%. Our visa regimes are very strict. So until unless we recognize, and this is what happened in the European Union, they recognize that there is the way out for the post-war Europe is regionalism, is coming closer to each other and improving their businesses also. So until unless we recognize that narrative is not going to change much. That's a point number one. On the border issues, the recent thing when we are talking about the COVID-19, and even then the border issues are coming up. I think that, as I said it in my presentation also, there's a different question of India and Pakistan. I don't see that any breakthrough is going to come in the near future. It may take long. But with the rest of the countries, I don't see that there is a major deadlock and that cannot be resolved through discussions and dialogues. So that is the point number one. And again, I emphasize on this that there is a role of India. India has to play a proactive role in approaching all the neighboring countries. So with Nepal, the Kalapani issue, yes, but I don't see that it may develop into, if the state wants, if both the state want it, the potential is that we can resolve, we can get something mutually acceptable to each other. And why I'm saying so, because there we know about India-Pakistan border, but about India-Nepal border, it is an open border. We travel from India to Nepal, from people coming from Nepal to India without much of the formalities. So if you have an open border system, I think there is a possibility that such issues can be resolved, and we can draw some examples from the European Union where they have resolved such disputes very amicably by making cross-border regions. So there are possibilities in resolving those border disputes, and also the identity part, provided the state understand that we have to break this in order to get the benefit of regionalism. Unfortunately, as of now, we don't have stakeholders in regionalism process in South Asia. The moment we start developing those stakeholders, they will work in changing this narrative. Thank you.
Thank you, Dhananjay. Thank you very much. Now, I invite Yasmin for her responses.
Okay, my questions is 3 challenge questions for me as well. The first one is, yes, it's the big challenge for Thai, over like for all of the Thai to mention about monarchy and to mention about the palace. But the thing that has been going on right now, I would say that it is challenge for Thai people, especially I would say young generations, to talk about this during the like, because last several years we have seen that the palace has been changing from the last king, King Bhumibol, to King Vajiralongkorn. The latest king's sons, which their character is different, you know, like son and father, they have a different characters, and because of the difference of the character, so the questions from the young people has become more and more. I would say that this issue will be the key factor for the clash of different generation in Thailand, because we can refuse that there are a large number of people, which is older generations, still love and feel that they should not have any reform of the monarchy or the palace. Palace is still something that very secure for them. You know, like it cannot be touched. It cannot be something that, it cannot be critiques, or it cannot be something that we should reform them. But young generations and some group of young generation think differently. They think that they need a reform for the monarchy, especially on the legal acceptance to allow for the criticism for monarchy. Like they used to like bring the example of the British or the Japan monarchy. Like they have a monarchy, but they allow for people to critiques or to show their ideas or to be much more transparent or something like that. That is the questions of a young generation and one group of young generation. But one group of young generation also still like they grow up with the family that feel that, oh, the monarchy is something that cannot touch. They will feel like, oh, I don't want to go with you with this. For the first, I may support like the movement to go on, like for a dissolution of the government or like a change of the constitutions or something like that. But when it comes to this thing, there is still something questioned in Thai society as a whole, that in which line that we will do with this issues. It's still like discussed, and we still have a challenge for working on this issue. So I would say like this for the first questions. For the second one, as mentions about the federalism of the case of Deep South, right? Yes, I come from the deep south of Thailand, and the deep south is one of the key challenges in terms of security for Thailand, because we have the conflict between government and armed group who think different from the government. That some of them they want to have their own land, or some of them they fight to have like because of the injustice that they have been facing in the past. So people here is I can say it's different from Thai people as overall. You can see like our look, our religion, our culture, even language, we are different from Thai as a whole. Like most of people here speak Malay. Most of people here is Muslim or are Muslim. So, but most of the Thai people are Buddhist, and we have like our own kind of lifestyle and our own like kind of a historical stories, which may be like different from the main Thailand in Bangkok. So with this different, some kind of clashing that is happening for all along the history. And also there is kind of legal misuse and enforce injusticely with the people in the regions, and make people feel like they want to resist and to the government, and with the and government try to deal with this issue through the military base way to deal with the issues. So it makes the situations become cannot be solved and cannot see that what will be finished for the conflict that has been going on for many decades. Federalism, I think, is something that has been come up, but is likely to be calling for decentralizations much more, and like give people in the regions to determine what we want to be. So this is the thing that most of the young generation, I would say, try to call that all of the regions in Thailand, which have a unique culture and unique style and way of life, they should have a right to self-determinations, that what the future we want to be through like a referendum or through kind of things. This is not the thing that young generation they want to propose. They don't feel like they want to go and fight and have support the armed group like before. I think this is quite interesting, that they don't support the armed groups, but they try to find like in a democratic way that in which way that we will have more rights to govern or to determine that what the people in the Deep South really want to be. So the federalism is kind of something that is one form of the suggestions, but I think it's still quite hard to go into that way, because like in terms of federalism, it will not be just in the Deep South, but all of the countries should think in the same way. So it's still hard, but let's see that what the people in the region will think in the future. It is important. That is what I'm thinking. And for the last thing, of course, I agree that Thailand is still have very close relations in terms of security with the US. We can say that even like during the COVID-19, among like international travel like restriction, the corporate growth training is still going on, and that's make all like Thai society still questions about this as well, that even the US, as we know that USA is the highest infected, there is the highest number of infected people of COVID-19, but as a Thai, we restrict many of the tourists to come to Thailand. We close the country, but we accept this corporate growth training still happening during this COVID-19. So I would say that it's quite interesting that how Thai government perceive, especially during a military one, perceive that the corporate growth training with the US is still more important than their own policy on restrictions, the border. So yeah, I would say something like that. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Yasmin. Thank you. You know, I have no doubt in saying that after listening to such a wide area of issues and all these experts and speakers delving into each of their issues that cross connects, you know, issues in South and Southeast Asia, I stand much more enlightened than I was probably 1.5 hours before. And I think all my you know, audiences will agree with that. And I thank all the speakers. For the formal vote of thanks, I pass over the floor to Paki.
Thank you, sir. Thanks a lot. Distinguished chairs, speakers, and ladies and gentlemen, as we come to the end of this session, I take great honor in proposing the vote of thanks on behalf of NIICE to all those who've graced us with their presence today and contributed their parts to make this event a resounding success. We would like to express a sincere gratitude and thank Dr. Monish Tourangbam for agreeing to chair and moderate the session today. Our sincere thanks also goes to all the speakers for being a part of the event and delivering such comprehensive and convincing presentations in a very short span of time provided. You're all definitely an inspiration for the youth of today, the future of tomorrow. We would like to present our gratitude to our friends from the diplomatic community, experts, academia, media, and different organizations as well. Finally, I must also mention our deep sense of appreciation for the audience who participated in the webinar and those who are watching this live on the YouTube channel. Thank you for your valuable time and attention and for making the session productive with your questions. We're truly honored to have had you all with us this afternoon and hope to stay connected in future as well. It's been a pleasure hosting you people. Also, do join us for the next session. Thank you so much. Thank you.